الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. ربنا زدنا علما وارزقنا فهما. اللهم ارحمنا، ارحم والدينا، ارحم أولادنا، وارحم أقربائنا، وارحم أصدقائنا، وارحم أساتذتنا، واشف مرضانا، وارحم موتانا، وارحم أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. ربنا تقبل منا بسر سورة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
You can switch your video on, Imam, so that when you participate, we can actually see you. And Dr. Palmer, that applies to you as well.
Ik leeuw nu rico besa man.
Ooh,
Subhanallah.
with the pajamas on.
Okay, so without going into a lot of detail about what was previously mentioned in our previous section, let me just close this, otherwise you're going to hear the rain falling here next to me. I'm just going to close that one door one second. If it gets very noisy, then you must tell me. I don't know what I'm going to do, but inshallah, Allah will provide the answer. Shukran, Imam Hussein, for your dua. What we're going to do now, inshallah, without going into a lot of detail about what was covered in the previous session, we are discussing the difference in understanding between the different groups that we have with respect to the understanding of cause and means, or cause and effect. Now, one of the things where people have gone wrong in the past, the group called the Jama'ah, they believed in predestination entirely. They believed that everything was predetermined and nothing can happen outside the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, that point on its own, we agree, but what they did not accept was that we have been given the free will and choice, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, nothing can happen outside the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the choice to choose what we want to do. Their understanding is, if nothing can happen outside the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it doesn't matter what we do, it will happen. The Qadariyah was another group who believed that now that Allah, in fact, they disagreed with the Jabariyah, and they then came up with this concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did give us free will and choice, and everything is not predetermined. They in fact didn't believe in the concept of predetermination. They believe that once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the ability, or we are born and we now come into existence with free will and choice, then what happens is, as people, we must now exercise our choice based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us to do. And they believe with that choice, they can do whatever they wish to do. That was a problem because, as we explained, they believed that they could actually create effect. And we were discussing the whole question of cause and effect. If they can create effect, and Allah can create effect, then it means what the philosophers and the scholars refer to as a concept of dualism. That ability to create effect resides in more than one place. And clearly that was unacceptable to us as the Ahle Sunni wal Jama'ah. Now, from what we've said previously, and I wonder if I should just go back to this just to refresh our memories. We said no effect in any form whatsoever can be created by anyone or anything in creation. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the ability to create effect. Now when we say, and we defined this previously, we said to create effect is to make things happen. And that to make things happen under normal circumstances, you need a cause. The cause causes something to happen, but nothing can happen if there is not a cause for it to happen. And whatever happens cannot happen without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving effect to that or making that happen. Now, I know people found it becoming very difficult to follow, but I don't want to repeat what we said earlier. What I just want to say is that once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses a particular thing as a means to create effect, and we use the example of, let me go on to the next. What is where we have left off and where we're starting today, which we didn't cover yet. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses certain means in creation to bring about a particular result. Now, when we say means, we use the example previously of the fire. Does the fire have ability to burn in itself, the fire itself? Does the water have the ability to quench the thirst or not? Now, I want to, before I even move on, that's almost like we just recapping now and giving the opportunity to share what our views are on this matter before I even move on to the next point. Is there anyone who wishes to pose a question or make a remark at this stage before we actually move into the details of this particular slide now? Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment at this stage?
No.
Okay, then let's move on. Now, one of the things that you must remember, we said the fire can only burn if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it that ability of burning at that moment, The water, you're thirsty, there's a glass of water. You pick it up because you want to quench your thirst. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the water the ability to quench your thirst that moment you pick it up. Does the water have the ability, now that you start drinking, does the water retain that ability after you've put the glass down now and you drank the whole glass of water? Does the water itself get that ability now to quench the thirst? Now we're testing what we've said before. And now I want people to interact and engage, just so that we can make sure that we have the concept straight in our own mind.
So, Salie, do I understand it correctly? It sounds almost as if there's like 3 different situations. The one situation, Allah Ta'ala created the universe. He predetermined everything that's going to happen, and He moves away and everything happens in terms of His predetermination. Or it could be that Allah Ta'ala creates the universe, has predetermined certain things and given us a choice. But once we make that choice, whatever happens after that is Allah is involved in that or causes that action. And the third one, where Allah Ta'ala creates the universe, has predetermined events, but also is actively involved in how everything unfolds in life. So if you drink water, then Allah Ta'ala is there to see that that water quenches your thirst.
Let's hear if there's anyone else who wishes to add to that, or maybe have a different view on it. Let's hear.
But Salie, perhaps it would be useful for us maybe to say that again, the whole idea is built around the fact that time and space is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So hence, when we think about Allah maintaining and Allah putting things in place, and Allah, even the aspect of maintaining has an element of time to it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists outside of that time, in a sense.
Okay, that's a point I was going to come to a little bit later in the session. The issue about creating effect is something that we must have absolute clarity about. Under no circumstances ever, under no circumstances ever does the ability to create effect transfer from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to creation. Be absolutely clear about that. Nothing in creation ever has the ability to create effect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that in the Quran, that Allah created the doer and the actions of the doer.
Yes.
Now comes the question, or let me deal with this issue that Muhammad Fasih raised. So, in a sense, the water is a means to quench the thirst. So, now that you've picked up the water and you want to drink it, we're waiting on the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What the Arabic word is idhan. With the idhan, with the permission of Allah, the water will quench your thirst. You wait for that permission. Now the permission is given. Time, does time affect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No. So does it mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the permission to the water, Allah's not affected by time? Does it mean the water now retains that ability to bring about that effect? When Allah created water, right at the beginning, did the water retain their ability to bring about the effect of quenching the thirst or not? Did it? Allah is not affected by time.
Although Allah is not affected by time, everything in creation is affected by time, and therefore Allah takes cognizance of the fact that it operates within time, although time doesn't affect Allah. It doesn't enter into His realm.
So, yes. Is there anyone else who wish to make a comment? Okay, so
Tamani,
yes.
I don't know how time is connected here, but as far as cause are concerned, it's created every time. It's ongoing. Everything which you're doing, it's created. You know, like if you drink water now, the effect of this is going to be created. If you drink it later on, the effect is going to be created by Allah again. It's an ongoing thing. It has never stopped.
Very good, Imam Hussein. I think the point that we are making here is, if Allah gives, even in one glass of water, the glass of water is made up of so many droplets of water that you never have a situation where Allah gives the ability for the water at that moment to quench the thirst, that the rest of the water now retains that ability. We must be absolutely clear about that, because if the moment you say, yeah, Allah gave the ability to the water to quench the thirst, then it means that the ability to create the effect has transferred, and that never ever happens. Okay, let's move on, because the question of time now, the means is also something that we must merely regard as a channel or an instrument or a medium that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to do something. Now, I've used the example of a postman. You can see in, oh, I didn't put up that, or let me not put it up. Let me just explain that quickly. The postman is supposed to deliver a letter to your home. The content of what is contained, he's got no control over. His sole function is to perform that function of taking that letter, whatever it contains, from point A to point B. Now, there are other examples where the postman doesn't have ability, but there are other examples. For example, the examples where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used certain means. The question of the Malaa'ikah, or the divine books, or the prophets, are means that Allah used to communicate from the divine to creation. So means must not, we make the mistake to take the means and to assign to the means certain abilities. Now, yes, the means can only create effect as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills that it does. But is there a compulsion on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once He has given water the ability to quench the thirst? There's never a compulsion on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ever. Allah can do whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. So means must be understood merely as a channel of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates effects out there without never without us never ever assigning the ability to create effect to means. Now, when we speak about it like that, it sounds quite easy to understand. But in our own lives, in reality, we constantly fall in the trap by assigning those abilities to certain things. Now, if we look at the laws of nature, the knife, the water, viruses, germs, medicine, who created those laws? What are the laws of nature? The
Gravity.
law, yeah, so many other laws. But the laws of nature are nothing more than how we discover the universe operates. And how the universe operates is based purely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws. So laws of nature is not something that some of the scientists and people who believe differently ascribe power to the laws of nature as if those laws stand on their own. But where do these laws come from? These laws come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the laws of nature, Allah uses certain means to let us understand. Because if you put your hand in the fire, it's going to burn. So we must abide by these laws because this is the way Allah gave us insight into how Allah created the general laws of nature. Now, I made this point. The means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using in the normal general way of the fire being able to burn, as long as we understand the fire doesn't have inbuilt ability to burn without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using it for the purpose to burn, and that the power never moves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever to the fire. The fire never has the ability to burn. Now, if you tell people that at the level of Islam, so where we take these discussions to, we must be important. Because if you say to people, no, the fire can't burn. It doesn't matter how much water you drink, the water won't quench your thirst. They're going to think you're absurd. Because the way we are discussing this topic now, we are discussing it at the level of Iman. A level that goes beyond the first level of belief, which is the level of Islam, where you think that your five senses and your brain and your logic is the way to determine how things work. At the level of Iman, we can understand that the means never has the ability in itself. Now, somebody's microphone is interfering. Now, can a means be created in existence without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being aware of it? Say, for example, they want to create a vehicle that can drive on land, go underwater, and fly at the same time. Or let's even go beyond that. We know from what scientists have established for now, the fastest thing that moves, the speed at which the fastest thing moves is the speed of light. Nothing moves faster than the speed of light. Is it possible that someone in creation can develop something that moves faster than light? That's a question now.
Wouldn't that mean also, Salie, that look, Allah isn't bound by those laws? I mean, the speed of light. So if Allah wishes, He could give something that power to exceed the speed of light.
Would that be something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the possibility of or not?
Yeah, well, Allah creates a possibility of everything. So Allah would have had to create that. For our human knowledge, light is the fastest speed. But beyond our knowledge, there could be something else that exceeds the speed of light.
Shukran, shukran. You see, the way we must understand this issue, everything that exists today, everything that's going to exist, whether it's an object or an event or an activity or a shape or a form or a color, has all been created before we were even born. It existed as a possibility which Allah established long before we came into existence. Why? Because nothing can be created in creation that is new. Because if it's new, then it means that it must be added to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge encompasses everything. And on top of it, it is not determined by time. So in the world of possibilities, every single thing that's going to exist or that you see around you has been already been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the world of possibilities. It merely waits on a trigger to bring it from the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into reality. And once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala determines for it to be, then it then exists from that point onwards. So now we come to the point that Muhammad Fasih raised about kun. Just so that it's such a difficult concept. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says kun, we now understand and acknowledge that kun as an instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not linked to time. I want to pick up the glass of water. That's my choice that I'm making, to pick up the glass of water. Can I pick it up on my own? No. Allah would have to instruct my body to execute that, to give effect to that I want to pick up the glass of water. Where was that? I haven't picked up the water. I'm wanting to pick up the water. Where was that instruction, and when was that instruction of kun? Be or do. It's a command. Where and how do we understand that instruction? If Allah is totally unaffected by time, but I haven't done it yet, does it wait for me to go to the point where I make the decision to now pick up the glass or not. How we should understand this is that the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is issued when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the universe. And every single thing in the entire creation, the instruction was given then already. Because Allah didn't have to wait for the universe to be created and then for time to move on and then wait for every event to occur and then give the instruction along the way. Allah is unaffected by time. But what makes this concept so astounding? It's not whether I want to pick up the glass. It's whether I can give my next breath. Not only me, but every single person's next breath is dependent on that instruction and awaiting the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every single breath of animal or human life is dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving the instruction for it to happen or not to happen.
Salie, isn't that like the form where the people used to say, alles gebeur net met die kudrat van Allah? Isn't that encapsulate what you're saying?
Yes, you can say that. You can say that, but after you've said it, how do you understand it?
Yeah.
When you say everything happens with the kudrat of Allah, so what does that mean? We all
that
know
Allah determines everything, irrespective of the time.
No, even children, when you say, who is Allah? They say Allah's all-knowing, Allah's all-seeing, all-hearing, Allah is all-powerful. But if you ask them, or most people, to explain the concept of what does it mean with the qudrat of Allah, do they actually understand that every single thing that happens, or as Imam Ghazali speaks about it, every movement or every stillness in the entire creation awaits the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, that is an entirely different concept, because if we had that concept clear in our mind, we would never think that we have the ability to do anything in our lives. But the point about time, now you're going to say, but the world is affected by time. Allah is not affected by time, but the world that we are living in, the material world, is affected by time. So, how should we understand that now? How should we understand that Allah is timeless, beyond time, but the world is time-bound? How do we reconcile the fact that there are certain things that's waiting to happen, and there are certain things that Allah instructs to happen, and that is not linked to time? How do we make the link between the two? It's something that we will struggle and struggle and struggle with, because our minds are so locked in to this world that we are living in, which is based on time and space. Now, one of the ways is to say that the instruction of kun, in fact, covers the entire universe and creation from the beginning of time till the end of time, and everything in between, with every object, every event, every person, every animal, every plant, anything that has to do, that instruction is not affected by time in any way. It's issued long before things were created. Would that not make the concept of Allah has decreed certain things, yet we are given free will? We will come to that. But on the point of how the instruction of kun manifests itself in the material world is the thing that we must say. Allah is not material and cannot be compared to anything that is material, but it moves from the realm or the dimension of the divine. It moves to the material world, and the moment it moves to the material world, the laws that Allah made for the universe then kicks in. And that is how we should understand the instruction of kun. Kun doesn't wait on anything. It has been issued long before the time and totally unrelated to time.
But when you say, Salie, that it's being created long ago, then you are related with the time. And isn't it maybe easier for us humans to look through time on Allah, on these actions we talk about, because we cannot remove time from our mind. It's impossible for us to fathom a situation where time doesn't exist. So when we even say, look, Allah determined this long ago, we're already looking through the eyeglass of time into how Allah creates and Allah makes his decisions. So maybe that's how we should look at it, because that's how our minds function, through time and space.
Yes, maybe long before, and the choice of words is because we find ourselves on this planet. Muhammad Fasir? Yes?
But Salie, maybe just to reference that, and I think to open and broaden the understanding for us in terms of how we perceive time, because I do understand what has been mentioned is quite a difficult concept. But the way I look at it, okay, I watch a lot of sci-fi films, and I have to use pop culture references when we're speaking about deen, but I think it's appropriate because we are naturalized in this way of thinking. The concept of time and the control thereof is entirely in the realm of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. I mean, for instance, for the Mi'raj to have taken a shorter period of time to transpire, but so many things happened in that period of time. And Rasul had so many different experiences. And many people might say also when we are asleep, for instance, and we dream, an hour can be contained in 5 minutes in terms of our experience in that state. But so we already get an idea of how time is bent in the physical world in the sense. But the reality of time itself is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not restricted. So therefore, past, present and future is in the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times and never leaves the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The fact that and in every single moment contained in that whole realm from beginning to end, so to speak, is already in the realm and it's already in the grasp of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is necessary for us to have these laws of time in order for our world to make sense to us. But that is the way I look at it, that's a testimony to the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah is in control of the complexities that we don't even understand pertaining to the realm of time. I mean, that's just the way that I want to maybe put it.
Sorry, isn't there another argument one could make to say that it probably, like the Prophet ﷺ said, when he got to his bed was still warm, so that whole Mi'raj and that events happened, of course, in seconds. But Allah with his power could have made those events happen in a matter of seconds. So that it felt, for us it felt like, maybe for the Prophet ﷺ it felt like weeks or days or months, but it actually happened within a few seconds because Allah wanted it like that. And not that time doesn't actually apply there, but that yes, time does apply, but Allah wanted it to happen within a split second.
You see, now we're getting to the finer points where none of us, it doesn't matter who we are, will be able to fully explain what happened if we use the example of the Mi'raj. What I think is important for us to say when we talk about the Mi'raj, we are talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being summoned to the divine court and the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what are we talking? We are talking about a journey that moves from the material world to the unseen world. Now, when we talk about the unseen world, then time as we know it doesn't apply. So we can't even use seconds to describe an event that can't be described in terms of local material concepts and apply it to a world that's totally unknown to us and indescribable. So I don't think we should try and fully unpack it, because we will never be able to do it. And those people, some of the awliya, who have been given understanding and knowledge of the unseen world, even if they were to explain it to us, our minds will be totally incapable of understanding it, because that experience and that knowledge is something that you taste. You don't know with your mind. So the limitations of the mind doesn't even allow us to go beyond saying time never applies to Allah, and that this is the reverse, almost in a sense, of the instruction of kun. Kun came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the material world, and that instruction manifested itself in the material world. Yeah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in the material world and went from the material world into the ghaib and the unseen world. How, no matter how we ponder, we're never ever going to be able to find a true and proper understanding of how these events actually occurred. If we say Allah is in control of all the means, it means that every single thing in the entire creation is waiting on the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it to do what it is expected to do, except for human beings. The decision of what it wants to do is part of the concept of free will and choice. Is the rain very loud? Can you pick up the rain as I speak? Or is it interfering in any way?
The volume is, it's almost as if the sound is quite soft at the moment. But it said his mic is quite soft at the moment.
Is it?
Yeah.
Let me just pull out the mic and see if it is louder. Is that louder now, or is it still the same?
I think maybe it's picking up the ambient sound of the room, so maybe it is picking up the rain. But I think it should rectify itself, inshallah.
Okay. All right. Let me keep the mic on because it's easier for me. I'm in the earphones. So if we say human beings have been given the ability to choose what they want to do, now we must be careful. Everything else must do exactly as that instruction that came right at the beginning of creation. Kun, be. The dog can bark, he can't fly. The birds can fly, the fish swim in the sea, and they can't go outside of that. The Malaa'ikah can only do what they want to do, or what they've been instructed to do. All these things without choice must follow the laws of instruction, whereas we are given the ability to choose. Can we do whatever we want to do? Can we do? Allah is going to punish us if we don't do what Allah said. Do this is the good and this is the bad, and this is what is associated with either side. Can we do whatever we want to do? Can we choose whatever we want to do? Can we? Muhammad Farid. Are you still with us, Muhammad Farid?
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, I'm here. So
yeah,
it's quite a difficult concept to what we just went through. So I just needed time to process that, inshallah.
Okay, all right. Let's hear from Aisha.
We can, but my way.
Okay, the instruction is you shouldn't do some things and you should do certain things. That's the laws that Allah has put out there. Are we able to do whatever we want to do?
With
Salie,
Allah's will. With Allah's will.
With Allah's will. If Allah wills, yes.
But does Allah will me to take a
we-
knife and stab someone? What if you do that? If I feel I want to kill someone and I stab one, does Allah say I must do it? Or can I only do it with Allah's will?
I'm asking you now.
I'd say yes.
If
There's certain things you can do.
certain things you
Out of your
can
own
do
will. Out of your own will.
out of your own will. So there are times when you have will that's independent of Allah.
There are certain things which humans can do that is so horrific that one can't conceive that Allah would, out of his own, want to permit it, although to an extent he does permit it, because if he wants to stop it, he can stop it.
Now let me ask
there
you.
is an element, there is that choice somewhere that you can do as you please in certain things.
Pause there before you go further. You are touching on something that we're all going to ask afterwards or under other circumstances. So you want to do something terrible to stab a man. Are you able to stab on your own? Do you have the ability to stab?
I have the physical ability, but in Allah's control of everything, Allah must allow it to happen.
What physical ability do you have? If we said, no one can create effect. This is a good example to actually test our understanding. If no one can create effect, what ability do you have to stab? Are you saying at that moment when you decide you have the ability? Let me just pause you there. This is exactly where the Qadariyah that we spoke on earlier about, where they went wrong. They said, Allah's given me the ability and power and told me what is good and bad, and then gave me the choice. They believe that as long as they must account for what they can do, they would be allowed to do whatever they want to do, but they must at the end of the day accept the outcome of the deeds. That is very dangerous to believe that we ever, remember what I'm saying now, that we ever have the ability, because the ability never ever transfers from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to anything. So the starting point should be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always, under any circumstances, whether it is good or bad that we want to do, we never have the ability to do anything. That ability that Allah created, the doer and the actions of the doer. So no one ever has ability to do anything. But the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above what we want to do. It's above that. So we desire to do it. Now it waits on two things. Our desire to want to stab or to drink the water is waiting on two things. The will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to execute what we want to do, to give, and then the second one is to give effect to that thing that we have decided to do. So yes, the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then the ability to carry it out would then not come from me, but would also come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are extremely, extremely difficult things. We're not going to be able to overcome all these difficulties by just having one session on it. But let me just go on because I just want to conclude on this section, because otherwise we are going to there are times when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates effect without using any means.
Yeah.
And one of that would be, for example, what we mentioned in the previous session, that unlike many other examples where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the Malaa'ikah as a means to make certain things happen or to convey certain messages. But in the case of teaching us the names, it was taught to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, to such an extent that that knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, and as we said in our previous session, were not only the names of objects in our surroundings, but they were actually a true understanding of the actual names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even then, it was exclusively given to human beings, where they were instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach those names to the Malaa'ikah. And that's an example of where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't use a particular means in creation, but actually used or conveyed directly to us that information without using any specific means. I think the important thing also to say is we never ever know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will is. We sometimes, if we want to do something and something goes completely contrary to it, then we realize, Allah willed it differently. Why can we say Allah willed it differently? If we wanted to do X and the opposite happened or something else happened. Why can we say that? We know what Allah's will is. Then, afterwards. Because nothing can happen without Allah's will. It's so simple. If it happened, then that was Allah's will. But was it Allah's choice? Is a different thing. There are two subtle points that we must understand together. Nothing can ever happen outside the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah is the one that gives effect. But Allah doesn't decide what our choices will be. Why not? Why is that not something that Allah will do to decide what our choices are?
Otherwise, you can't be held accountable.
Exactly. If Allah decided what our choices will be, then there is no question of reward and punishment. We will be like the Malaa'ikah. We will be operating under compulsion. We must do what we must do because Allah has willed it like that. Who believed like that? Fasih?
But Salie, if I can just make to expand on that point.
Before you expand, who believed like that if it's Allah's will, then no matter what we don't have any say in the matter. The Jabariyah.
Right.
The Jabariyah were the people who felt we were under compulsion. That if that's the will of Allah, no matter what you do, everything you see is the will of Allah. Is it? Yes, it's true. But they didn't factor in the question of choice. So you can understand how important it is to properly go through what the problems were in the way the Jabariyah believed and the way the Qadariyah believed, and why we say we believe differently. Do we believe differently? We claim to believe differently. But if you look at how we understand and behave, then much of what we are doing and saying is actually believing at times like the Jabariyah, and at times we are believing like the Qadariyah, and we are off the path from the way we say we ought to be believing. Muhammad Fasih?
But Salie, so looking at this, it makes sense where Islam teaches us that every action is judged by its intention, not by the actual deed, but the intention. Because what the soul is inclined to either obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think that's why when people talk about why did God allow this to happen, why did this happen, why did that person kill this child or do this or do that, the reality is that at the end of the day, it is what that soul was inclined to that he will be held responsible for. The fact that he was inclined to do something against the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he was inclined to do something evil, or that he was inclined to do something good, something for the sake of Allah, something to help humanity. That is ultimately what we are being held responsible for, not the physicalities of how we do the thing.
Yes.
Shouldn't we define intent there? Because the intent is meaningless if there's no action. I mean, I can intend, like with this stabbing the man, I can intend to stab him, but I do nothing. It's only when the intention is linked to an action that intention has any value and where Allah will consider it. Your other intentions are just your thoughts.
Not really, because if you say intention to do good or to do bad, Allah speaks about it and the Sunnah speaks about it. If you intend to do something bad but you never carry it out, you are not going to get punished for it. But if you intend to do something good and you don't carry it out, it's well known that we get reward for that. So intentions are very important. It forms the very basis of our belief system. Our niyyah informs our actions. So there might be times when we do something that is perceived to be wrong, but our intention was to do good. I can quote you a very practical example. When we stop at the robot, always have change in my car. When my wife is not around, I give the way I would normally give. When my wife is around, das ek te bang om te gee. Because she believes that what I am doing, I am encouraging something that Allah doesn't like. Allah doesn't want people to beg. They must make an effort. And her belief is she will help and give to people, but she's not going to encourage begging. Now, if my intention, say she is right, Allah knows, Allah will judge between me and her who is more right and who's more wrong and who's maybe half right and half wrong, and so it goes on. But say she is right. My intention to give. If I give in a case where she is right, then it means I'm doing something wrong, right? Now, right and wrong becomes even an issue. She's right when she says I am doing something wrong. Allah will judge my intention before Allah judges the action. So if the intentions are elevated, even people who fast, it's clear, the hadith and what people say about people who fast without the right intention. So the intentions are important. But I think that is not the point that is being examined now. The point is, if it is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't know what it is to allow us or not to allow us to execute it. That's why you can't stand in front of the bus and say, if it's the will of Allah, this bus will knock me. If it's not of the will of Allah, I will be able to stop this bus. I don't think we must take chances like that. We will be one person short in this session. We must comply with the... Eh?
Your intention to stop the bus may be good because somebody is walking across the road, but that's not going to happen.
Comply by the general laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made known to us, that the fire burns and the knife can hurt somebody, and we use it in the correct kind of manner, and never misunderstand that we can know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will is. It's only after things that we will see, oh, and how often has it not happened? When Allah did not will for us something in our lives, and many, many years later, we only then see the wisdom. Oh, that's why that happened. Then some of that insight as to why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made certain things happen differently or stopped us from doing certain things, because Allah knows the future before the actual event. The final say I think is where we want to conclude on this issue is always with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah doesn't only create. This is what we must remember. We have this, Allah is the creator of everything, then we walk away. We've now covered the point. Allah created us. What we must understand is Allah doesn't only create, Allah also controls, and Allah sustains and maintains and organizes and synchronizes the entire universe. So with that, now it's not separate actions. Allah does that without separating creation from controlling and sustaining and maintaining. But it's to make it easy for us that when we say Allah creates, that we actually understand where that comes also. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed us, get to know my names. You will get to know me through my names, because then you will understand all the different things that make up the whole question of bringing things into creation. This will be our next one, which is even going to be more difficult to arc and change the decree. But before we go there, I would even say, even if we spend the whole session, next session, only on dealing with the question of what we've covered up to now, then we should do that to deal with any points of clarity or concerns or misgivings before we move on. Because if we're not clear about what we've covered up to now, the other areas are going to become just very difficult to comprehend. So I want to conclude from my side now and hear from people whether they actually clear about it, or whether we should actually go back to some of the issues that we've covered in this session. Muhammad Farid, you said you would rather reserve your comment. Do you have a comment now?
Salie, I would rather like maybe in the next session to recap of what we've learned now. Alhamdulillah, we went through the issue of time and of creation. That point that Salie made regarding is still with me regarding if Allah gives you, for example, you want to decide to drink a glass of water, does Allah then wait on your decision, your option to drink a glass of water, and that happens? No. So what's residing in my mind is that we are dependent on Allah for everything, and we are dependent on Allah for everything. So inshallah, I want to unpack that more further and ponder more about that, inshallah, and get that more solid to my understanding. The issue of time, alhamdulillah, I think we went into depth about the issue of time. Alhamdulillah, that is much more clear with me. It's just regarding that was a beautiful thing, but very deep to understand, and I want more clarity on that, inshallah.
To make it easy, I want to just give you one of the tools. If we approach this matter by saying to ourselves, as human beings, Allah has given us free will and choice. The only thing we have control over is that free will and choice. We have control over nothing. But even that free will and choice that we have is below the overall will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The primary will is Allah. Allah can overturn any person's will. But Allah has given us free will and choice. Allah does not decide for us. Every single thing in the entire creation, every event, every occurrence, every action is completely and directly under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's control. Not just control to say whether it should or should, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually creates the actual effect to make that thing happen or to not happen. Aisha?
Yeah, I was just summarizing what I'm trying to summarize what you mean by Ahle Sunni wal Jama'ah, what we believe. So this is what I wrote. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has will over everything. The only thing we have is free will and choice. But ultimately, Allah has power and will over everything. And
to make it easier for you specifically, I'm going to come to you now, Shabnam. I just want to say, Aisha, to make it easier for you, how we believe is to go back to the Jabariyah, who believed in what they call determinism or fatalism, is some of the big words they use, that Allah has willed and there's nothing we can do, no matter what we do. How do we respond to that? And the other one is Allah has given us free will and choice with ability to create effect, was the Qadariyah. Now, if you look at how we believe, what do we believe that's different to the way they believe, then you will find your answer a bit easier. Shabnam?
Alhamdulillah, I understand, Shabnam. I understand what you said today.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. These things are not clear. These things are not clear. I get lost in it myself all the time when I think about it. But if we are clear about this, we will never ever do injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by claiming for us or anything else out there to have ability or power to create effect or to make things happen. Because how can you make proper ibadah and worship Allah correctly if you don't really know who Allah is? Because you are actually saying at times other people have what Allah has. You're actually putting partners up next to Allah, and that's dangerous. So the exercise, can I just say, is something that hopefully, inshallah, will unlock the door of becoming knowers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not knowers like the Arifin, like the awliya, but we're on this path. We're on this path. We're far too weak to ever get to where the awliya are. But we're actually yearning. We're yearning to be on that path. And the first step we must take is get to know the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala correctly. What can be applied to Allah and what can never be applied to Allah. And if we're clear about that, you've actually reached a foundation on which you can build many of the other concepts like good and bad and predestination and all of that. Then when you go back to the hadith or the fiqh or any other aspect of Islam, you can actually understand it so much better because the foundation on which you are building your understanding is much more solid. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy, remove the veils of ignorance and doubt and uncertainty from our minds so that we can get true knowledge. Because we say to you, Ya Allah, as weak slaves, as weak as we are yearning to get closer to you, our Rabb, our Creator, our Sustainer. We are yearning to achieve your nearness and your pleasure and your closeness and your satisfaction. We are yearning for that, Allah. We ask you, help us along this path. We are so weak. We can never ever do it because we understand nothing comes from us. But we are expressing our desire to get closer to you, Allah. With all our weakness, we say, when we now say, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, we worship you, Allah, and to you we turn for your help. Say this, even if you don't say the rest of the Fatiha, say that with a different understanding and a different meaning. Make that even as a dua on its own. Make it throughout the day. Make it throughout the day. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. And see how that will assist us to become better slaves in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah lift the veils of ignorance and darkness so that we can all benefit from the session and make it possible for us to learn from one another, and let us never ever use our knowledge to use it in the correct way. That's going to be one of the last points I make, is don't let us use an improved or better understanding to show to others what we know or what we don't know, because Allah can see what our motives is deep inside our heart. Let us use it for the purpose, like we are doing it now, collectively discussing with one another, to see how can we use this to be of benefit to others, and for us to learn from the others also, and to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to end off on that note and thank all of you, and hopefully, inshallah, the topics that we are going to be dealing with are equally difficult. But don't let us run away from it because it's difficult. Because if we deal with it, Allah is with us on this path. We are on the path of wanting to know Allah. Allah is with us. Allah will go to each one separately and assist us on getting a better understanding on some of these issues that so many people find difficulty with. So we're going to end off and ask people to please make a special effort on Sunday at 2:30 to join us again. And Imam Hussein, or now that Muhammad Farid is here, we ask Muhammad Farid, تفضل, make a closing dua for us.
حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا من جعلت الصلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من القربات، نتقرب إليك بكل صلاة صليت عليه من أول النشأة إلى ما لا نهاية الكمالات. الفاتحة إلى سيدنا محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، بدت إلى سيدنا الشيخ حازم الغزالي رضي الله عنه. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Walaikum salam. Shukran jazilan. I hope that we'll all join at the next session, inshallah. And for those people who have joined us, like Dr. Palmer, we hope that you will continue to make yourself available, inshallah. Your presence was welcome and appreciated. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum to everyone else. I just wanted to, Shabnam, if you're still on, I just wanted to say to you that I don't know if there's anyone here in Cape Town who can get a set of the books that I have on these topics. There's 6 books in total. If you know of anyone who can collect it from me, then I am more than happy to give you a set of these books. If you are not able to for now, and I hope inshallah with the lockdown down and all of that, we'll be able to get a set of those books to you. But in the meantime, you can go to my website, salimani.co.za. It's got all the books, the PDF copies of it, and you can access the books from there in the meantime, inshallah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Shukran very much to everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran.
Alaikum salam. Muhammad Fasih, I'll phone you on the cell phone immediately after this. Shukran.
Okay, inshallah.